distinguished guests, scholars, and seekers of truth. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Imagine a man who in 12th century Andalusia, with no telescope, no particle accelerator, no quantum laboratory, mapped the architecture of reality itself. A man whose ideas about consciousness, existence, and the nature of God were so profound, so systematically ahead of his time, that 8 centuries later, the most advanced branches of modern physics and philosophy are still struggling to articulate what he described with breathtaking precision. That man was Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, born in Murcia, Spain, in 1165 CE, known as al-Sheikh al-Akbar, the greatest master. He was not merely a mystic in the popular sense of the word, he was a systematic philosopher, a rigorous metaphysician, a man who constructed a complete and self-consistent account of reality from first principles. His 2 greatest works, al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah and Fusas al-Hikam, together constitute one of the most ambitious philosophical projects in human intellectual history. Today, I want to take you on a journey through 5 pillars of his metaphysical vision and show you precisely where modern science stands stunned, incomplete, and reaching for what Ibn Arabi already knew. Let us begin with the cornerstone of his philosophy, Wahdat al-Wujud, the oneness of existence. Ibn Arabi did not say that God is in everything, as if God were a substance mixed into creation. He said something far more radical. There is only one being, and all multiplicity is its self-disclosure. In his magnum opus, al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah, the Meccan Illuminations, he writes that existence is a single reality. That reality manifests at infinite levels of intensity and form, from the densest matter to the purest light of divine intellect. The rock, the rose, the human soul, the archangel, these are not separate things that exist alongside God. They are the single reality appearing to itself through infinite mirrors. This is not pantheism. Ibn Arabi was careful to distinguish his position from any doctrine that simply equates God with nature. The relationship is asymmetric. Creation depends entirely on the real, but the real is not exhausted by creation. Now fast forward to 1935. Erwin Schrödinger, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, writes in his book, What is Life? That the multiplicity of individual minds is only apparent that in truth there is only one mind. He draws on Vedanta, but the structural argument is identical to Ibn Arabi's. Later, quantum field theory arrives at the conclusion that all particles are excitations of the same underlying quantum field. There are no truly separate objects, only modes of vibration in one continuous substrate. Science has empirically demonstrated the field. Ibn Arabi had philosophically articulated the principle 8 centuries prior, and he went further. He explained why the one necessarily appears as many. He called this tajalli, divine self-disclosure, a concept science has no framework to even ask about. Science only describes how things happen, never why being itself manifests. That frontier belongs entirely to Ibn Arabi. The second concept that reveals his extraordinary insight is al-Ayan al-Tabita, the fixed archetypes or immutable essences. Ibn Arabi proposed that before any created thing comes into physical existence, it has an eternal, non-manifest reality within the divine knowledge. These archetypes are neither fully existent nor fully non-existent. He describes them famously as having the smell of existence without possessing existence. These archetypes are the eternal logical possibilities within the infinite mind of the Absolute. When God knows a thing, that thing acquires a kind of proto-existence in the realm of pure possibility before time, before space, before matter. Compare this to modern mathematics and theoretical physics. Max Tegmark of MIT has proposed the mathematical universe hypothesis, the idea that mathematical structures are not merely descriptions of physical reality, but constitute reality itself. Every logically consistent mathematical structure has independent existence. Before any universe is realized, its mathematical essence already exists in a non-physical sense. Furthermore, in quantum mechanics, the concept of the wave function describes a particle existing as a superposition of all possibilities before observation collapses it into one actuality. The particle, in some sense, exists as pure potential before manifestation, an uncanny echo of the Ayan al-Tabita that Ibn Arabi articulated 8 centuries before quantum theory was conceived. But Ibn Arabi went further still. He said these archetypes are not passive potentials, they have requests, a quality he called istidat. Each archetype has its own inherent demand, its own desire for a particular kind of self-expression. The universe does not impose form on formless matter, rather, the archetypes call forth their own manifestation from within. Science speaks of physical laws as external constraints imposed on passive matter. Ibn Arabi described an ontology in which the tendency toward form is internal, inherent, and purposive. That is a distinction modern science cannot even begin to formalize, because science has no concept of inherent purpose built into the structure of things. Here we arrive at what is perhaps the most difficult and most revolutionary of Ibn Arabi's concepts. Alam al-Mittal, the realm of imagination, or the imaginal world. This is not imagination in the modern sense of fantasy or illusion. For Ibn Arabi, it is an ontologically real, intermediate world, more subtle than the physical, more concrete than the purely intellectual. Ibn Arabi describes a cosmos with three primary levels: the physical world of sensory forms, the imaginal world of subtle forms, and the purely intellectual world of pure meaning. The imaginal world is the crucial middle ground where abstract realities take form and physical forms acquire meaning. It is the realm of prophetic vision, of dreams that contain real knowledge, of the angelic stratum of reality that most modern people have been trained to dismiss entirely, a domain that is neither pure idea nor crude matter, but genuine reality, in a mode between the two. This is what modern philosophy has no category for. The 20th century French scholar Henry Corbin spent his life arguing that Ibn Arabi's Alam al-Mittal is not metaphor, but ontological fact. He coined the English term imaginal specifically to distinguish it from the merely imaginary. He argued that modern Western philosophy collapsed the three-tiered cosmos into two levels, losing access to an entire dimension of reality. Now consider, modern neuroscience and philosophy of mind are locked in the hard problem of consciousness. David Chalmers' famous formulation asks why and how subjective experience arises from physical processes. No one knows. The explanatory gap is total. What neuroscience cannot explain is why there is something it is like to be a conscious being. Thousands of papers are published every year, yet none solve this. Ibn Arabi's framework suggests the question itself arises from a flattened ontology. If one insists that only the physical is real, then consciousness becomes an anomaly. But if an imaginal world is real, then consciousness is not a mystery, but a window. Among Ibn Arabi's most celebrated doctrines is al-Insan al-Kamil, the perfect human. The human being is the barzakh, the isthmus between the divine and the created. It is the only locus where the absolute becomes self-aware through a finite form. Man is to God as the pupil is to the eye, through which sight occurs. Humanity is the organ of cosmic self-awareness. The cosmos knows itself through human consciousness. John Wheeler called this the participatory anthropic principle. The universe requires observers to become real, a self-synthesizing system. Ibn Arabi would recognize this immediately. The human is the mirror of divine self-knowledge. The universe needs the eye to see itself. Finally, Ibn Arabi's doctrine of al-Khalq al-Jadid, perpetual creation. The universe is continuously recreated at every instant. Nothing persists independently. Existence is given moment by moment. Remove it, everything vanishes. Being is not static, but dynamic, a continuous act. Quantum field theory echoes this through constant fluctuations. Reality is emergence, not stability. Yet identity persists. Why? Ibn Arabi answers, archetypes sustain continuity. Modern physics cannot explain this. He grounds identity in eternal knowledge. These are the 5 pillars, 5 deep convergences. But this is not prediction, it is deeper. Science answers how, not why. Why existence exists, why consciousness arises, why laws are what they are. These lie beyond science. A deeper framework is needed. Ibn Arabi offers one. Through kashf unveiling, a higher mode of knowing, beyond senses and reason. In 1240 CE, he passed away, leaving over 300 works. A legacy still unfolding. He revealed unity, meaning, purpose, the human as central, creation as ongoing, reality as light. Modern science gives power, but not meaning, not purpose, not grounding. We are informed, but lost.